How you guys doing out there? Tim Mahoney here with Being Mahoney podcast. We are here for a special edition of my show. We're calling it the Grateful Dead Show. This is something I've always wanted to do. Obviously, an appropriate week with the Grateful Dead shows in Chicago this weekend. I've got a couple of my friends here to start a discussion. We're going to go through some of the early stuff. I kind of wrote some questions out. I'm a fan, but I don't know a lot about them, so I'm going to learn a lot. We're going to start with some of the basic questions and then probably get into more intricate Grateful Dead stuff. Again, if you have questions, and if you're not listening live, if you are listening live, you can email me or tweet it at Tim Mahoney Music, or email timmahoneymusic@gmail.com. Any questions for the show? If you're listening later, check out beingmahoney.com. And I got my friend... and my bass player, Chad Whitaker, who has been playing with me for how many years, Chad?
Almost 12.
12 years.
October will be 12 years.
And he has been an awesome friend and an awesome bandmate, and he is I would call him a 100% deadhead, but he also does not look like one. He looks like a banker. But we're going to talk about that. Well, no.
or more like an IT guy.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about that, meaning, you don't have to look like one to be a fan. Right. And why don't you introduce yourself? My other friend, that I did this thing with Twitter today because I wanted another person for the discussion, and I put out a message who's a Dead fan. And I got my friend here who's going to introduce himself.
Yep, I'm Rugby Guy on Twitter. I'm John Eichton.
John Eichton. What's your Twitter handle?
Rugby Guy.
Rugby Guy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have a Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
It's Neck Pants.
Neck Pants.
Neck Pants.
If you want to do Chad, check him out at Neck Pants. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start. We're going to start with some pretty broad stuff, like I said, and I'm just going to ask you, each of you, how did you first hear the Grateful Dead, and really what turned you on initially? Like, where did you first hear them? We were talking about that before. So, Chad, why don't you start, and how you became a fan?
Actually, it started in high school, and to be honest, I didn't like them at all at first. My friends in high school really started listening to them a lot, and I was kind of into my Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and all that, and it was so different than that at the time. But it's really weird. It was like a light switch one day after about a year. It just kind of flipped, and I started to kind of understand it a little bit.
And what era was that of the Grateful Dead?
Well, the album that actually really turned me on was One from the Vault, which was like the first archive release ever, I think. And that was a show from '75, and specifically The Eyes of the World from that first disc of that, I believe. And I just listened to that over and over, and that's kind of where it all started. I was about probably 19 years old when it happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Rugby Guy?
Oh, I was about 12.
12.
And, started listening to them. I think if you grow up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, about the, I hate to mention other radio programs.
Oh, that's
but
okay.
Back then it was
they don't listen to this
it
anyways.
was KQ. So
sure.
Whenever KQ would play a song, that I liked, I still to this day love "Light My Fire" because of KQ playing it twice a day.
Classic rock,
that kind of stuff. But I heard one night I heard "Truckin'" and went, "Wow, what is that?" And so I started asking around and found some people who had some of their bootlegs. And as soon as I started hearing their live music, I was hooked.
You're hooked.
Yeah.
So today, just as learning more about the Grateful Dead. I'm an iTunes person, digital, so I go on iTunes, and Chad told me about some things to download, kind of an overview, and I picked up a live compilation called So Many Roads, 1965 to 1995. It's got 42 songs, and it goes from, Chad said, the beginning, right, the first year?
I think it starts with a demo they did in '65. They'd only been an electric band for few months.
And let's take a listen to that. It's called Can't Come Down, and I remember when I listened to it today, I don't know, it almost reminded me of like the Monkees or like something. I don't know, just listen to take a clip of this, and obviously it just sounds 60s, maybe that's what I mean, just the groove of it.
To me it sounds like they're trying to kind of do a Dylan thing a little bit.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
wearing uniforms on nighttime beats. Ask me
Who's singing on that first stuff?
I think that's Pigpen. He was
Okay.
kind of the original leader
Okay.
of the band, so to speak.
Yeah, it was definitely Pigpen, and that would have been post them being called the Warlocks and them then adopting the Grateful Dead.
Were they the
moniker.
Grateful Dead then, or were they because weren't they the emergency crew on some recordings?
They
That could have
they
been
were
that.
they were a host of different names. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
And who were all the original first members?
Well, there was 5. So I think Pigpen.
By the way,
was,
we're going to make this a contest. Who
Yes.
knows more? And we're going to give out. We're going to give out bags of weed as a prize.
Ron Pigpen McKernan,
yeah,
and then I'll let you say the rest.
yeah, he was the original kind of front man of the band. And then there's Jerry Garcia on lead guitar, of course, and Bob Weir on rhythm guitar, and Bill Kreutzmann on drums, and Phil Lesh on bass.
Cool. What? So when I picked up this thing, and again, we were talking about when Sting opened up, and you said why Sting wanted to be involved. He just wanted to learn about Grateful Dead and just see what it's all about and really understand it. And I would say that definitely describes me. I am a fan. I don't know a lot about it, but I also want to try to understand it. I think that's what this podcast also is about, is trying to understand what people like about it, what specifically brings them to it. I think sometimes when you say the term Grateful Dead, to some layman people, they put this whole, pot smoking, I'm high, long hair, tie-dye thing. And obviously, there's a lot more to that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it.
People rip on them, and most of those people probably haven't never heard them outside of maybe Touch of Grey or
Right.
Right.
Truckin' or something.
And how do you think that started with them, with that culture, right? I mean, is that just the time period, with the getting high, the tie-dye, the long hair?
I think a lot of it had to do with the Ken Kesey and the acid trips and all that. I mean, it was Haight-Ashbury, and
They were the heart of Haight-Ashbury.
yeah. I mean, along with Santana,
And
Jefferson
Haight-Ashbury,
Airplane,
just in case someone's listening and doesn't know, Haight-Ashbury is
San Francisco,
Right.
and was sort of the king area of the counterculture in San Francisco in the mid to late '60s.
Yeah.
Right.
You had the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin,
Quicksilver Messenger
Quicksilver.
Service. A host of different bands, including Santana. Anything basically that Bill Graham was affiliated with was usually considered to be psychedelic.
And in those original, we look at the logo, of course, which you've seen. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy how many people know the Grateful Dead logo and stuff, but don't even know the music. How did that start? I think you told me who the artist, Chad, but maybe you can tell me about the artist that started the Grateful Dead logo and the drawings that we've seen through the years.
I don't know how much you know. You might be better if you seem to know
You're-
more
you're-
about, like, talk
you're-
about Mouse, maybe.
Yeah, you're talking about Steal Your Face.
Right.
That's what I'm
Yep.
assuming.
Yep.
So yeah, because there's a lot of logos that are considered to be Grateful Dead-ish, but definitely Steal Your Face is their trademark, and that
And
was
is that
was
is
done
that-
by Mouse.
Of course, we
Yeah.
don't have video, but is that
Yeah.
this?
It's the skull with the
This
lightning
right
bolt
here.
in
That
it.
is-
Exactly, yeah,
So
with the lightning.
if you're listening, it's a skull with a lightning bolt in a circle, and that's the original logo.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the variations from that logo, was that all designed by him, or the record covers and all that stuff?
I think it was a little bit looser than that. I don't think there was anything official really going
Yeah.
on. It was still pretty. It was kind of there was different people did different poster art, and that's part of why the poster art, the big exhibition that's going to be down in Chicago
Right.
on Saturday, is so exciting because there's so many different artists that contributed, and the Grateful Dead were open to anything.
Yep.
They were like, "Hey, do up a poster. We don't care," sort of thing.
No.
I think also they weren't really realizing the monetary positives that could come from it. They didn't
Right.
realize it
The
until a
merch
lot
thing.
later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a little bit into the music again, and let's start with maybe some of your highlight. We'll start with the earliest stuff that you like. Why don't we start with you? Saying maybe a show. Let's look at because one thing they talk about with Grateful Dead, if you're listening, is that They talk about what era did you like of the Dead the best? What specific show was your favorite? There's obviously some debate about that, especially massive debate.
No, there's no debate.
Yeah,
Everyone agrees
there's no
on everything.
debate. Everybody agrees. Yes,
You guys don't
Yes.
like get in a fist fight or anything. Yeah.
we're both pretty good size. So
There we go.
yeah, there
Oh,
could
so
be
that would be kind of ironic, though. A Grateful Dead guy is getting in a fight. It just doesn't sound like those things happen.
The funny thing is we're both wearing glasses, so I don't see it happening.
Yeah, that's
But for me, I'm gonna go back. I really became a fan of the Cold Rain and Snow, everything off of Working Man's Dead and American Beauty and the really old stuff. So when they do those songs in concert, I get really excited. But then again, too, I get really excited in just about everything. The only thing that I don't really find all that exciting, even though I really like the long jams, which is sort of a contradictory. I'm not really a big drums and space fan, but I'm a fan of just about everything else. But I go back to my first show was actually 1987 at Alpine Valley.
And you were there.
And I was there,
Okay.
yeah. And it was terrific fun. It was a bunch of guys. It was a college thing.
Were you high?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So along with everyone else that I ever came in contact with. So but I specifically, I'm one of the few people that can say, yeah, I'm a huge Deadhead, but I skipped the Dome show because I knew it would be a shit show. And I just thought there's
Good for
no
you.
way those three bands are it's going to be sounding good in the Metrodome.
So tell me about the Dome show. Now, that's, of course, we mean the Metrodome, but what, you skipped it being here because...
I skipped it. It was here. I had friends that were going, and I thought that I definitely want to see the Grateful Dead, and I want to see them soon. That is not where I want to see my first Grateful Dead show.
Okay, and who did they play with?
Bob Dylan and...
Tom Petty, was
Tom
it?
Petty, yeah.
Oh, that's a
yeah.
small lineup.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the Grateful Dead had it's to my knowledge, their sound guys had never actually played in a dome before of that size. And they said, don't worry, we'll take care of it. We know how to do acoustics and everything. And it was awful. I mean, there were people saying that they were, 50 feet from the stage, and it sounded like they couldn't even hear the music.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of other shows that we can talk about that we don't need to beat a dead horse.
We'll get into that, Chad. You're so the earliest show that you like or hits you.
well, I kind of said it earlier with that one from the vault. I wasn't actually there from the one from the vault because I was like 3 years old or something. John's actually seen quite a few. You're like at 30 shows.
Somewhere between 25 and 30. I kind of lose count.
Okay, so. I've only seen him 6 times, and I actually didn't get really into him until after it was over. So my knowledge comes more from just doing a lot of listening and a lot of reading.
So what show
that I was at or that I heard?
Well, heard.
Oh, that I heard. If you ask anybody, it's really hard to narrow it down to 1 or even 10. But I think you could throw a dart at May 77 calendar, and you could find a good show from that month. I think that whole month is phenomenal. Yeah. 72 is another one of my favorite years. The Europe tour is great. The fall also, like September 72, some really good shows. And I also like, the last great period, like 89 and 90, the last couple of years with Brent. And I even like the next year or two after Brent with Bruce and Vince. I would say, up through 91. And up starting around 92 is, in my opinion, when they kind of started to fall, down again. And it was all over by 95.
How was it that their first recordings, we think of Grateful Dead, and we're talking obviously about shows, live stuff. It seems we almost always associate them with the live show. And, of course, they did have some studio records, but when did they become live and it just became that's their whole deal? Did they start with a studio record and then, become a live thing? I just wondered how that transitioned to where, like, wow, the Grateful Dead, it's all about the live experience, the live thing.
I think they may have figured that out early on because they basically in the late 60s were working on, I mean, they put out a live album right at the end of 69, which was called Live Dead, and some people say it's, one of the best live albums of all time by anybody. And it's kind of a suite. The whole thing kind of runs together from one song to the next. And back then, they didn't really have a lot of different songs, but they used to improvise a lot within those same songs. So you might hear the same song 3 nights in a row, but it would be totally different each time. And so I think, by the late 60s, they had an idea like, you know what, the live experience is our thing, more than studio albums. I mean, and they must have figured that out because in the early 70s, they released, a live album after every studio album there for a couple of years. So.
Yeah, and I think they, my timing may be off, but I think they recorded 3 albums in less than a year. And I think that was to fulfill the record contract.
And when was their first record contract? I mean, was that with
that was
their
with
first
Warner
record?
Brothers?
Yeah, Warner Brothers.
Yeah. And did they start releasing? I'm just trying to put a picture on. Because I think of myself. I put out studio records, and when they first put out the records, when did they start putting out live stuff as releases?
Well, I've always kind of broken it up into 2 categories. There's contemporary live releases, meaning they put them out at that time. Okay. There's like Live Dead is 69. It shows from 8 months earlier or something like that. So it's fairly recent. They put out the Skull and Roses album that's just called Grateful Dead in 71. Right after they recorded those shows, Europe 72. Dead Set, Without a Net, so on. But around 91, 92 is when they started to kind of do archive releases where they would go into the vault and say, hey, so up until just a few years before the Grateful Dead was done, you couldn't really go to the store and buy many live albums. I mean, they had like 5 or whatever, but people were trading bootlegs. So It wasn't that big of a deal.
And now, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but just with the digital age, how do people trade? I mean, obviously we have torrent sites. We got all that stuff where they can download from. What are they doing now? I mean, we got Dick's Picks. I saw it's, a lot of it's on iTunes.
btetree.org
okay.
is like the jam band torrent site. It's all legal.
It is legal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Anything on BTE is legal. I'm 99% positive.
Right.
Yeah.
And just quickly go on that when I go into Grateful Dead here. I'm just looking on iTunes, which we talked a little bit. But again, someone who maybe is just a casual fan, they have Dick's Picks. And tell me a little bit about Dick's Picks. Maybe both of you guys say a little. John, you can take it.
Well, Dick's Picks, Dick was and I of course can't remember his name, but he was a
Latvala or something.
Yeah,
I don't even know if I've heard anybody say it.
Yeah,
I've only seen it.
Yeah, it has a lot of consonants, a lot of vowels. Anyway, but he was quite the fan, and he had done some audience recordings. It's my understanding. And they didn't sound really good, but he was a good friend of the band and everything. And they decided that, hey, why don't we allow him to be kind of like our in-house archivist in the sense of sort of pre Dennis McNally, being able to look at the recorder, listen to the recordings, and decide what was good, what was not good, what should be released, that kind of thing. I think, though, that it took a long time for it actually to happen. I think he was like a friend of the band for, we're talking like 15 years before they actually did any Dick's Picks.
Yeah, and Dick's Picks just, is a compilation of shows.
We should probably say, like, for people who don't really know the Dead, you probably think, why would they put out all these, like, millions of these live shows? Well, the big thing about the Dead that why people would follow them is they would never do, they always played different shows, or you might be able to go see 5, 6, 7 shows in a row and not hear the same song. And that's why, I know, and that's why people, and even when they'd play the same song, it would be completely different from the last time they played it.
Right.
So it's justified, really, of any band out there, the Grateful Dead more than anyone else, is justified to have that many live releases because they have so much different they've evolved so fast over the years. I mean, you can almost listen to a show and you could probably, and John could too, I'm sure, pick out probably what year it is, just by listening to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You think of it.
Let's test that. How about that? Let's John, Chad, pick. Let's see. Let's have. Why don't we play
this one right
let's play
here?
This one right here. I'm picking
Don't
one off
say
a
it.
sheet that Chad picked here. We're going to see if John can guess.
Okay,
right.
hold on. I'm gonna
era?
I got to open another beer first.
Yes, this is a
There we go.
podcast. We have beverages, having a good time. So when we play a little sample here of 47, maybe get into it a little bit.
I already know what this is. I think,
Yeah, but you
say
made the list, so.
but you played it at random, right?
I think it's pre-73.
Okay. That's not right.
Wow. I'm liking it anyway.
I'm liking it.
Oh, you're playing this off of my
Yes.
playlist?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were playing it off your
No.
phone. Oh, okay.
This is off of your own playlist.
That's probably why I know it then.
So this is Dancing in the Street, Pembroke
Yeah.
Pines, 77.
I was going to say it didn't come out till 76, so yeah, I was very wrong.
Dix
there.
Picks 3. One of the very first archive releases, actually. Can
Nice.
I say the first probably controversial
Sure.
statement / opinion of
I
the
love it.
evening? Maybe it's not the first, but I always tell people, we'll probably get into this too, but a lot of people say Cornell 77 is like the best Dead show or one of the best Dead shows. And it's a really good show. All of May is good. This was from a couple weeks later, this Dance in the Streets. And I always tell people this Dancing in the Streets is like Cornell, but without the mistakes.
Nice. Nice.
What do you think?
I think that's spoken from a true musician, from somebody like me that's the fan that doesn't really understand the nuances of the different chord changes and everything. I just know what I like, and I know what I like to dance to.
Right.
But I can still really hear. I mean, I have probably 300 to 500 cassettes, various recordings, and a lot of them actually are soundboards because I happen to have a hookup back many years ago that got me a bunch of them, and you can immediately tell it's like, whoa, what were they playing there, sort of thing.
Yeah.
The differences. So I can just imagine what a monumental effort it was to do all the archives and produce Dix Picks and everything.
And that kind of brings me to when we talk about, I'm a musician, so is Chad, and you said you're not, which you're right. People you just hear something, you like it, you don't. And actually, we always say as musicians, those are the most important kind because those are the people that really buy stuff. Musicians are just going to hear. But when people talk about their favorite shows, is it because they, or Chad, maybe I'll ask you because you're the musician, is it because it was played better? Is it just the vibe? Is it the players? I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of these answers, but maybe go into that a little bit of like what makes, when you like a show, even from your perspective, obviously you know the instruments, but why? I mean, is it just the groove?
The thing that I like is I like an immediate groove, song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4. I don't want there to be. I want there to be quite a considerable amount of good dancing music before they hit anything slow, so that I can build up that inertia of, okay, boy, now it's time to maybe slow it down a little bit, maybe take a breather, because at the Grateful Dead, from 87 to not really 95 when I last saw them, because I think some of the shows, the 2 shows that I saw in 95 were pretty sketchy, but and that'll be controversy. We can talk about that later.
Not
but
too controversial, probably. But.
They were not as danceable, and there was a lot more questioning of the music in 95. But I like them to get rocking, and I like to get up and dance and shake my booty for a good 35 minutes before I sit down.
Sure, Chad. Me on that same question, just when you pick a show, now being the musician, is it because, wow, they played better? Or maybe like we even talk about, they didn't play the best, but there was a lot of energy in that show. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that energy is the most important thing. That comes, and then, playing all the notes right or whatever is secondary, I think. But there are many nights where I believe the Grateful Dead have that energy and that, pixie dust or whatever you want to call it, but also play everything really, really well. And so those are the shows I try to go and snuff out myself, and I think for me, a lot of it has to do, has to do with the set list. But I think the most important thing is just that the set has a really good flow, and like John said, the grooves. I mean, if they're in the pocket, especially like in the mid-late 70s, it just sounds so good, and you can't even tell there's two drummers. They're just so in the pocket.
Speaking of the drummers. From a non-musician standpoint, the most fun shows that I've had were when they do have video and I'm able to see Mickey's eyes, his face. If Mickey is smiling, it's going to be a good show.
Oh,
really? I've never heard anybody say that. That's awesome.
Well, and for people listening, they have had two drummers. Were they the first to do that? I mean, how did that start? I mean, and where did that even come from?
Well, they started out with one.
Okay.
And they didn't they have Mickey sit in a couple years after they started?
I thought they had him sit in as a percussionist.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar to Mr.
And are
Pretner.
they playing like the same groove, or are they kind of trying to do a little different? Like, is it?
Well, I think they were experimenting back in the late 60s and early 70s with the addition of Mickey, because he was into such wide avant-garde type of percussion instruments that I don't think the initial idea was, hey, we need a second drummer. But I think there was some shows that Bill was out that Mickey sat in on, and then it kind of went from there. But
okay, yeah. So Bill was he was out.
I thought Bill was out for a couple shows for some reason, and Mickey. They realized, well, wait a minute, now the percussionist can do it. So, and it just added rolling thunder. I mean, they perfected the term.
Yep. I just want to give a little quote. My uncle John Layton, who I did a little interview with him today, and he grew up a little bit in the era, of the 70s. He's a great guitar player and collector. And I asked him, we're going to start getting in a little bit about honing in on Jerry a little bit, and talking about his role in the band and how it created that signature sound. Now, I'm not saying the other members didn't, but I feel like I'm just kind of giving my view of just learning about it. Of course, his guitar style, his playing style, is just unmistakable. When you hear it, it's just something that, and then to give debate to it, some people call it, I've heard musicians that would rip it and say it's noodling. And then my Uncle John Day was talking about, who is very educated in this, is just saying it was so melodic, and how he would build and not peak too early, and would just really go around the chords. He talked a lot about his guitar sound, and just that he played it like a pedal steel, where he would have those, he said, a big JBL speakers, and he'd run like twin reverb heads through the JBL speakers, apparently.
Okay, yeah.
And would play the guitar with a lot of reverb, and it would give this kind of, he called it crunchy or something, like this little thing. So what is your thoughts on that? Just Jerry's, role in the band musically, as far as his style of playing. Obviously, we know you're a fan. I guess I'm looking for stuff like, what do you pick out? Why do you like Jerry's sound?
I was a big fan of Tiger and Rosebud, the names of his guitars.
Yep.
I think that the fact that he was one of the, obviously, that guy that just passed away with Lucille had a name guitar before him, but I would say Rosebud and Tiger were pretty popular. They were pretty famous, and If ever he wasn't playing them and then he brought one out, it was like, oh boy, what's going to happen? There was that sense of emotion and that excitement. What's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And then some shows he just started off with one or the other. So, but quite famous guitars from the fan standpoint.
Chad, what about Jerry's sound? How does that affect you? What specific things do you like about it? His role. I mean,
I guess it's hard to say because what I really love about the band is the way they all sound together.
Okay.
Because when they're playing really, really good, or they go off in some certain direction all together, when they all hook up and sync up, it's like you can't. It's almost like you can't tell who's what at that point. It's just this really cool sound that So I mean, as far as expanding on like what Jerry was for the band, I mean, it's hard for me to say because
you just think you look at it as more for sure. It's together.
A finger on a hand, as Phil Lesh would say. He's like, I just always felt like it was a finger on a hand.
Well, that which we'll get into in a little while, but of course, coming up to the shows this week in Chicago, or any other of these things without Jerry, we're going to get into opinions about that. My uncle also mentioned. I'm staying a little bit on Jerry here, but when he went off and did this kind of that folky stuff with, he said, is it David Grisman?
Grisman, yeah.
Grisman?
Yep, Olden in the Way and stuff.
And he talked about his playing banjo and all this stuff of being amazing. What's your thoughts?
He's a huge bluegrass.
Yeah.
fan.
Did you hear that?
He had actually started off as a bluegrass player.
Right. Okay.
Banjo, mandolin.
The Grateful Dead originally was a bluegrass band.
Exactly. Yeah. So they evolved into a rock and roll band versus being versus him. Not to pick a fight, but not to go off onto another tangent. He returned to his roots, which was pretty exciting stuff.
You can pick a fight. That's good. We want edge on this
Exactly.
show.
Yeah.
This is being Mahoney, so come on now.
Yeah. But his the stuff that he did with David Grisman is fantastic.
And that was called
A lot of his Olden in the Way.
okay. And what was
Grateful
the other thing?
Dog.
Grateful Dog. That's
Yeah.
one he mentioned.
Shady Grove was one of the albums they did.
We're gonna, like I said, I'm bouncing all over only because, like I said, learned a lot just in the few days. Of course, Googling, which is so general, I get it, and I'm probably gonna get ripped on it when you show this to forums. But that's what you do, right? You Wikipedia and all this stuff. And obviously, there's just some general stuff, but you bounce around, and we go back to the experience of the show. And that was one thing I was talking about with my uncle, where he talked about you're high and people watching the show. How much do you think that plays into people being fans? Like that experience of the live show where you've got, it's psychedelic and the songs are, 10, 20 minutes long. How much do you think the experience plays into the music? Meaning, if you're just listening to a live record, which, of course, you've said many times you like to do, how much different is that of being there and experience it? That's really, I guess, what I'm getting to.
Well, I would say in 87 when I saw my first show, the experience was the scene was a tremendous experience. I would say that I've already said I got into them when I was 12, not when I was 25. I didn't get into them because of the scene, because, hey, this looks like a good party, and I hear they have that truckin' song. I got into them because I knew 8 of their albums, and I wanted to go see them live. And I think the scene was an extension of that. I think later on in the 92, 93, 94, as you have said, years, the scene really kind of overtook the experience of the Grateful Dead in several venues and caused a lot of problems because I think people kind of lost that vision that it's not just about the music, it is about the party. But I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, I'm going to Chicago, I'll be at all 3 shows, is I kind of need to excise the memory of the last show and the last couple shows that I saw out of my psyche, sort of thing, because the scenes were just so incredibly negative.
And what was that era? What were those shows that you last saw?
The last I saw 2 in '95, and I can't honestly remember if I saw shows in '94 or was it '93. I know I saw shows in '93. I don't know if I saw them in '94, and I can't find all my ticket stubs. So.
And when you say that scene was bad, was it the show or was it just what was happening around it?
It was happening around, and then also concert tickets. There was a lot more counterfeit tickets.
Right.
Although we did a lot of mail order, and you got your mail order, then somebody always was missing one, or only got 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 4, and then someone needed them, and then they spent a considerable amount of money, and then we found out, oh wait, that's a counterfeit ticket, and they were some pretty sophisticated folks that were out there scamming deadheads, and then there was also a tremendous amount of illegal. Drugs, shall we say, following
like what kind
them
of drugs?
around.
What were the drugs people? I mean, obviously we get pot and stuff. I mean, acid obviously is a big thing.
PCP.
Okay.
There and
that's to kind of enhance the psychedelic, right?
Right.
To,
when you're traveling,
I've never done PCP. I've done pot before, acid. I think, but what is that? I mean, I'm not really getting into it. It was like, how does it make it just sound better, or does it make it different?
I was just thinking, PCP would be really cool to listen to Tim Mahoney.
Probably not. They'd probably be like, what is this person doing? But that's,
It probably depends on the person. I mean, everybody's going to get something different. I mean, no one person is really, really specifically like going for the exact same reason.
And I think that's, too, what I'm also trying to show or maybe research on is that it might help or add an experience, but that the music is there, that you could be sober reading a book at home listening to it. Yeah. And it has, I was sitting in my car a lot today with coffee just going through this so many roads and just kind of bouncing around the eras. I want to play a little clip of a song. Let's see if John can get this one. Let's do another testing. Chad already told him this one, so I feel like it's not fair. But let's see if John can get this one. Now, to me, it's just like the groove is just so groovy. And that rhythm guitar playing.
Well, the Hammond B3 is already starting up, so I would already be up dancing.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were going to... So where do you think we're at here for...
'87.
Okay, let's see here. We are... This is live in Hamilton, Ontario. 1990. Yes.
90.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. I've heard this recording before.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, this sounds really good. Now it says it's called Scarlet Begonias. Is that right?
Begonias.
And then Fire on the Mountain. Which Fire on the Mountain, I feel like a lot of people know that. That's kind of a staple, right?
They both are. They've always played those 2 songs together. Almost always.
Yeah.
Scarlet came about 2 or 3 years before Fire on the Mountain, so they used to play Scarlet obviously alone. But they put Fire at the end of Scarlet almost from the beginning after they had written it.
Yeah. Well, you guys talked about, one record that comes up even when you Google, and you guys mention it, a lot of people mention it, of course, is the studio record American Beauty. This was my first experience with the Dead, was American Beauty, and just completely loved it. When I heard Ripple, I just thought it was, this is where I just heard amazing songs. Of course, now when I'm learning about all this live stuff, to me it just seems so different, right? When I hear of that studio record versus the live stuff, maybe each of you give me little thoughts on American Beauty, just as a record sticking out, or at least I think it does. You guys kind of mentioned before, so Chad.
It's so different. it's one of the rare occasions when you say like you're a newbie to a band or something, or a noob or whatever you call it, where there's that first kind of entry level place to start where people kind of go, oh, he's only listening to that. But it's one of the rare cases where, if you say you love American Beauty, I mean, very few deadheads are going to argue with you about that.
Okay.
Right.
It's a real. If you don't, I'll just say right now, if you don't really know much about the Grateful Dead, go and listen to this album, and it should hopefully kill a lot of those stereotypes out there. I mean, the lyrics are great, the vocals are great, the music is great.
Who was that lyric guy too?
Robert Hunter.
Yeah.
Wrote songs with Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, and he wrote like the lyrics. I remember I saw To Ripple. Which is always different, right? When someone just writes the lyrics, that's weird for me. I mean, not that I co-write, but to just have someone just write the words.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
I would say that American Beauty is one of those classic albums. I think Rolling Stone has it. If they don't have it on their top 15, it should be all-time records for any band. You think of that. The Grateful Dead, which came out in '67, was
their first album.
First album was raw. It was raw. The recording was raw. The technology wasn't as sophisticated. Doesn't sound as well. The second one, Anthem of the Sun, and then the next release, Oxmo Oxwa, just kind of tried to capture, but didn't really.
It was just starting to tip at that point.
Yeah, just didn't really get there. I mean, even to a longtime Grateful Dead fan, the amount of time that I've spent listening to Anthem of the Sun is probably less than 3 times ever. I hate to say that, but
How about American Beauty?
American Beauty, I've listened to way over 100 times.
So to give you an idea of American Beauty, I realized that I bought it 3 times on iTunes through the years.
Wow.
2 remastered and 1 not remastered. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, just for some perspective, when they started in the '60s, they were kind of like a psychedelic R&B, like a dance band, really, but they just would play the songs for 10, 20, sometimes 30 minutes. And then they got into the super psychedelic stuff in the late, like kind of like acid rock or whatever you could call it back then. And then all of a sudden, they kind of reached this peak of the psychedelic music, and they just like came back down to earth, and they made these 2 albums, Working Man's Dead and American Beauty. And Working Man's Dead is maybe, in my opinion, just a sliver behind American Beauty. Like, they almost got it perfect with Working Man's, but then they went and did another one, and they're almost like brother and sister albums.
I totally agree.
Let's play a little clip here. One of my favorite is just Addicts of My Life. Slow song, but just the vocals. I remember it hit me on this song, and just the melancholy of it. Take a listen. Can you turn up a little bit?
In the attics of my life, full of cloudy dreams unreal, full of taste.
Yeah, there's just no denying that's just beautiful. Just real quick, it makes you think of the bass in there. Let's hit on that a little bit.
Can I just make one point since we're on the album? It's almost like a buzzkill to say it, but one of the biggest reasons these 2 albums came about, they were kind of coming back down to earth, but they just were they were really in debt, really deep in debt to Warner Brothers by the time they got to making these albums, and they really just went in and said, we want to do these albums fast and cheap, and so they just went in with a lot of mostly not all acoustic, but a lot of acoustic instruments, and because both Working Man's Dead and American Beauty albums both came out in 1970, and the Live Dead, which was their first live album, came out in like November '69. So I think that's what you were talking about earlier. They put out 3 albums within a year, and it's crazy to hear Live Dead, which is the peak of their psychedelic era, and then just like 4 or 5 months later, they come out with this complete 180, and it's not many bands do that.
I was just going to hit on, I was thinking about the bass, and the bass player's name is Phil, right?
Phil Lesh.
Phil Lesh.
The Phil zone.
But just his style, right? That, almost playing it like a guitar a little bit. Maybe, John, give a little thoughts on that. I mean, just even as a layman person listening, you said not a musician, but...
I like the heaviness.
Yeah.
I think he, for the majority of the shows that I've seen, there's just this heavy booming... it's a control. He's driving the songs, driving the music. I think, I don't know how to play any of those notes, but I love hearing them when he does it. It's interesting to note that when I hear other jam bands do Grateful Dead songs, which I do go to a lot of jam band shows, and I do go to a lot of concerts, and I follow a lot of other bands. When they do Grateful Dead, the one thing I always notice is the bass just kind of sounds off.
I would agree with that. It's
Chad's a bass player.
I am
so
a bass player.
How do you hear that? I mean, because that's another thing that I do agree that it sounds very unique, like Jerry. It's just
him and Jerry are really the kind of the anchor in a way of that band. I mean, their interplay
would you say
together.
That they're most of the sound.
I would say most of the sound, because Bob Weir is actually a big part of that too. And I know we're on Phil, but Bob Weir is probably just as good of a rhythm guitar player as Jerry is a lead player.
Okay.
But those three together, I mean, they've had different keyboard players over the years, and obviously the two drummers, though they didn't always have two drummers. They had one, and then they had two, and then they had one again, and then they had two again. In the 70s, Mickey Hart left for a couple of years.
Interesting. So maybe talk about, through the years, we had the different musicians, of course. How many, what about the people that had died or passed away? How many, who are they, and how many?
Well, Pigpen was the first one.
Yeah, Pigpen died first.
73, I believe.
Unfortunately, for a drug overdose.
Okay. And how did that affect the band?
Well, that's when he was really sick. So Pigpen went on the Europe 72 tour, and I think he might have played one or two shows after that tour, but after that tour he was just too sick and he couldn't do it. And he died I think it was maybe March 73. I could be wrong on that. So at that point they had already had Keith Gotchow for about a year and a half. I think he was the replacement. He was a piano player when Pigpen was kind of sick before the Europe tour as well. So they had Keith as the second guy. And so once Pigpen was gone, it seemed like they kind of went more down a jazz route. Pigpen always kind of gave them that blues edge. They always had a little bit of that blues sound to them back when Pigpen was in the band. But once he left and they got Keith, they kind of went more of a jazzy, like 73, 74 to me seemed, and even 75, even though they only did a few shows because they went on hiatus, sound very more jazzy than anything else. That was definitely, to me, their jazz period.
Okay.
It's not that black and white, but they definitely had more jazz influence then than any other time in their career, I would say.
And who else? So give me other members that had passed away.
Well, then the second keyboard player, Keith Gotchow, he died, but it wasn't. He'd been out of the band. I think it was kind of a mutual agreement. I don't know if he got kicked out or if he quit, but he died in a car crash. I think just a year or two later.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and then his replacement was Brent Midland. And he played with the band from 79 till about 90, and then he died of a drug overdose. And so the keyboard player spot in the band was just kind of a cursed spot. I mean, every keyboard player that they had has died, except for Bruce Hornsby, who played with them for a couple of years, and Tom Constantin.
I was going to say,
I almost forgot about him.
He's the one that we missed, yeah.
And how about the Hornsby thing? What did you guys think of that era? Of course, just because people, when they hear Bruce Hornsby, they think of, listen to the metal in the rain.
Yeah.
And how did that end up with the Grateful Dead? Anybody know how that happened?
It's there's kind of two sides for the Bruce. I mean, I personally, I love Bruce. I think Bruce played really well with Jerry. Brent died summer of 1990 after the spring tour, and so when they started fall tour, they brought in Vince Welnick and Bruce Hornsby. So they had 2 keyboard players. And the end of 90 was pretty good, but I think 91 was a really good year too. There's some really good stuff in 91 where Bruce and Jerry, and you can tell Jerry's to my ears, it sounds like Jerry's kind of re-energized again, playing with Bruce, and Bruce was pushing Jerry to do, higher and do different things and inspiring him, basically. That's what it sounds like to me.
And you can see in some of the recordings, some of the videos that were shot during that time, and there's some really good video out there of Jerry Garcia almost constantly looking over at Bruce Hornsby. Yeah. It's really interesting. And at first I took it like, is he leading Bruce so that Bruce knows where to go? And then I kind of thought, wow, this kind of by the end of the show kind of looked like it was the other way around.
Yeah, and that's actually some of the reasons some people didn't like Bruce. They thought maybe he dominated a little too much because he's a very strong force no matter who he's playing with. And maybe just because it's like, well, it sounds like Bruce Hornsby. Why is this Bruce Hornsby sound in the Grateful Dead?
I read in an article, and again, there's so much stuff about the Dead, whether it's true or not. Just get your thoughts on it. That Bruce left the band. One of the reasons was he mentioned that it was because at that time he just thought Jerry's playing was so erratic. Now, I don't know. Again, it's something I read. It was in Rolling Stone. Any thoughts on that?
That would have been the 94 tour?
92.
I don't know.
He left in spring 92.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
And I guess they didn't go into it. I just meant erratic. I mean, I didn't know what that meant. Or did they say other reasons why he left? Or
I always heard, what I had heard is that he just left because the scope of the song list that they would draw from was just getting smaller and smaller, where Bruce wanted to do more different songs, like, and have a bigger rotation of songs to go through, and they just didn't really care. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying this is true. This is just what I've heard and what I've always believed. And he just kind of got bored and said, yeah, I'm going to go back to doing my own thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, too, it takes a special person or not as dominant personality to want to be kind of play the fifth fiddle in a sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was there in support of the Grateful Dead. He was no longer the name act. And I think maybe ego played a little bit.
It could have, yeah.
Yeah. John, let's get a song from your mind. Why don't you pick something somewhere, and maybe we'll play a sample, and maybe just tell me why you like it. We just want to maybe periodically be playing some stuff for people that don't know. Obviously, the Dead people, which they're listening, a lot will be stuff they already know. But a lot of times it's just generally like why do you like something? Why do you like a song or?
Okay, so I'm going to hark back to my comment about wanting to dance. Number 19, please.
Which one is that? There you go. That's a barn burner. The song was brand new.
And this is?
One More Saturday Night.
Okay.
Went down to the mountain, I was drinking some wine. Looked up in the heaven, Lord, I saw my design written fire across the heaven. Raining black and white, get prepared. It's gonna be a party tonight. Hey, it's Saturday night.
And what year is this one?
72.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's actually probably in my top 5 favorite shows. It's April 8th, 1972 at Wembley Empire Pool in London.
Yep. That's from the Europe 72 tour.
Yep.
Yep.
That was actually off the Steppin' Out with the Grateful Dead. It was a 4-disc set that came out probably like 12 years ago. It's still to this day one of my favorite archive releases. It's just a kind of a 4-disc compilation of all the Europe, England shows they played.
Okay,
in
and that's one of the songs that was very, in a sense, traditional, early, or I want to say late '60s. That they played when they really started to hit, I'd say on all numbers, when their concerts seemed to get when their concerts became humongous parties, and they started gathering a tremendous following that just wasn't in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right. I want to hit on. I know there's a few of them. This is maybe the biggest one, or you can tell me if it is the cover stuff. Of course, people, these cover bands. We see a lot of tribute acts and stuff now, but one specifically that I was talking to my Uncle John about, because he said he saw them and he just said they were very good, was this Dark Star Orchestra.
They're fantastic.
What's your thoughts on that? And John, why don't you start?
I think they're fantastic. The first time I heard them, I was extremely skeptical. And basically, my history is that I basically dropped out. It was either in 93 or 94. That's what I was saying. I can't remember because the scene was so bad. I went to Alpine Valley, and I was just like, boy, it's just such a frustration. And then I ended up seeing two shows in 95, including, unfortunately, the last one. I was outside of Soldier Field. The Saturday night show, I couldn't get a ticket. That one was sold out. Sunday was fairly easy, actually, to get a ticket to. But I saw that, and so after Jerry died, I just went away. I started listening to jazz and a bunch of other music, and I didn't really return to the jam band scene until, ironically, when Trey Anastasio played at the Langerado Music Festival, and I was there, and I heard him playing and thought, oh my God, I got to get back into this, and really started to get into it. And that's actually around the time that someone said, hey, have you heard of DSO? And I thought, no, I don't want. I'm done. I've heard so many of these. I mean, every now and then it's fine. They're like, no, these guys are different. They actually have the soundboard tapes. They have note for note. They have everything.
They recreate entire shows,
right?
And the fun thing about them is they play the show, but they don't tell you what it is, and people guess. And at the end of the show, they tell you this was this show from this month, day, year.
And somehow everybody with social media by like the 9th song figures it out. But which I always find really interesting because I'm a total social media-aholic, and I actually put my phone in my pocket during it. They are fantastic. I love to just go and dance, and I'm always really interested, actually. God, what show is this?
And
right.
Were they endorsed, or has there been any comments from the actual Grateful Dead about?
Yeah, actually,
I
don't know if all of them have played, but the majority have played with them.
Wow, I mean that's just got to be a trip.
Yeah.
We'll go a little bit into. You mentioned Trey, which is from Fish.
Can I just say something quick? It's so funny that you said that you got out of it because of the scene, and then it was Trey that kind of brought you back in. I was turned off to Fish because of the scene in 2000. I followed him for about 6 shows in summer tour 2000, and it was just the same thing. It was just horrible scene. That was right before they went on hiatus. And so I didn't I didn't listen to Fish for almost, I listened to him, and I actually, so probably about, when they got back together in 2009, I just really didn't care much about Fish much long after those tours.
Yeah, I unfortunately totally missed the Widespread Panic, the years where they were starting to get really popular with Mikey, and then Mo and String Cheese, all that. I basically took all that time off, and now it's kind of funny that here I am turning 48, and when I go and see a band like Mo, I feel like I'm 12. Like I don't know their music really at all, but I absolutely love it. And then people will turn to me that are like 25 and go, "Hey, old guy, what's the name of this song?" And I'll like,
now you're that guy.
I don't have a clue.
Yeah, right.
But I love it, But those are some. There's been some interesting years there where I think stepping back for a couple of years has made me a much better fan.
Yep.
I just want to hit on the Fish thing. That gets thrown in the pot sometimes a little bit of, not with the the serious fan, but just the overview of people put the jam band thing, Fish, they talk about when Jerry died that, a lot of the Dead fans went to Fish. Now, really quick on my thought, of course, musically, I'm like, how is that even close? I mean, Fish is so completely different. Just so different. Just really, quickly, each of you is how did that happen? I mean, what did Fish possess that got that scene going? Which again, we're talking about the tie dye and getting high. It's like, but again, the music for me when I heard it, I was like, there's nothing. How did this get it? Yeah.
The thing is, Fish and the Dead, to me, don't sound anything alike. The appeal of why people migrated from the Dead to Fish was that same theory I mentioned earlier about you can go follow them on tour and they don't repeat a song.
Okay.
And again, their songs sound different and they jam it. I think Fish even took it, pushed the envelope even further than the Dead in certain ways, as far as like John explained, the Dead kind of sound like this Rolling Thunder thing when they jam, and it always sounds great, but it's kind of the same sound, when they jam. I mean, you just tell it's the Dead. The Fish always they really went out to outer space, like even farther than in certain ways, I would say. I mean, they would play a song and they'd go from reggae to jazz to ambient type grooves in one song.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's
thing
okay.
that I've seen, and I've now seen about 10 Fish shows, and I've seen about 10 Widespread Panic shows. Is Widespread Panic to me is much more like the Grateful Dead in the sense that the majority of shows that I go to, although I absolutely love them and I think they're fantastic, they have a very similar sound to the majority of the shows. I've heard the term cadence. I don't really know if that's the way it is, but the way that their songs go is almost somewhat predictable, although very enjoyable. With a Fish show, I have no flippin' idea where they're going, when they're going, and how they're going there. And I have a ton of recordings of both, but my Fish recordings are like, oh my God, I can't believe they were able to go
turn that corner so fast.
Yeah, on that one song that I love so much,
Right. Yeah.
And so this kind of brings us, up to the thing of course, the biggest loss being to the band, which kind of connects to the Fish thing, because that's when it, obviously ended in that realm, was Jerry's death. Maybe have you each just talk about that, how it affected you, and then, how it affected obviously the band, because we said they're all equal. And, and obviously maybe go into, we were talking about how Jerry died and his drug use and stuff is, maybe just each of you give a little thoughts on that, on your death. John, why don't you start on Jerry's passing?
I would say that I'll never forget the day I heard it, ever. The idea that I was outside of Soldier Field, could not get a ticket, search for a ticket. I was there with a friend, and we could not find a ticket anywhere. It was 150%, as the saying goes, sold out. There was no way to get a ticket for the Saturday show because it was the end of tour. And the strange thing is as jam band fans know, you never miss a Sunday night show.
That's so true.
And you never
Sunday night, because they do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Is that right?
Well, in the sense that you just never miss a Sunday night, Saturday night show. The second to last of tour close is going to be really good, but the really good one is usually going to be the last show,
the official last show. Of the tour.
And that was going to be Sunday and Saturday night. I think the band hit on all cylinders from what I could hear from outside, and it sounded good. I've heard the bootlegs. It sounds really good to me. I thought the music selection, song selection was really good and everything. The last show though was incredibly disappointing to me. There's just, especially in the second half, after the set break, there seemed to be something was going on with Jerry, and people were openly talking about it. And it's easy to say that now, 20 years later, people were talking about it, but I'll never forget it to this day. People standing there looking at each other, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, looking at each other going, something's really wrong with him. Like, he's not playing. So he's almost forgetting the notes he's supposed to play.
So he just was playing erratic? He just wasn't really there?
Well, no, this was more than erratic. This was something was really wrong.
Okay.
And there was a lot of speculation, and, of course, there was all these rumors. There was a lot of rumors on tour that year that he was back using heroin, and, of course, they ended up all being true. So,
right.
So.
And there's obviously a recording of that last show.
Yep.
So you can obviously hear
There's
that.
one on that box that you downloaded. It's
let's hear a little
song.
clip of that last show here.
It's kind of fitting, actually.
Yep.
Called So Many Roads.
So it's the very last Grateful Dead show with Jerry.
Okay, so this would be the last song ever played with Jerry?
Not the last song, but the last show.
Bluebird Hill. Saw me a wine boy, if you will. Gone when the sun don't shine, and I don't.
This doesn't sound too bad to me. I don't know.
Got no place to go. Ain't that a shame? But I heard that Casey whistle.
Great.
You do remember, though, this is,
Yep.
this is their ability to make everything sound really nice.
Of course.
So.
Yeah.
It's edited, too. I guess there was, he missed a few cues to come back to the verse or something. So, it's an edited version, but it's still good.
So quick, John, on the Jerry thing,
Yeah.
just, what did you feel like it just was over? Obviously, of course, everybody's very sad and that stuff, but did you just feel like the Grateful Dead? That's it. That's the end.
Well, I think that they had enough issues over the years where enough people had died. I think there was some light sort of jeering of the Grateful Dead from a fan perspective that when Brent died, a lot of people kind of dropped out. We're like, God, I really like Brent. They're not going to have the same sound, sort of thing. I'm not buying into the Vince Welnick sound, all that kind of stuff.
Very few people liked Vince.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of people that were dropping out, and there was a lot of people that were replacing those people that were dropping out were 19-year-olds that didn't know their music,
right.
that were there because it was a scene versus the music itself. Well, and I got to see that firsthand, and I actually got to experience it directly. But I think when he died, I think they were right to take that extremely long break and kind of go about their own projects and whatever they wanted to do, and it was time. They talked, and there's been a lot of video that's been produced since then, interviews about them thinking about taking an extended break before it happened.
Right. Were the band people, were they surprised? Of course, his death. Someone dies of drugs, but they've been using them for most of their life.
Well, everyone in the band was kind of different degrees of that, though. They weren't all using heavy drugs, or not all at the same time, or I don't know the details on that exactly. But I don't think anybody was really that surprised.
Right.
I think you and I, Tim, watched that Anthem to Beauty, that documentary about the early years. And Phil even, just said, well, he had to do it his way, He said, we tried everything to get him to stop using, just all, to pulling him aside one by one, or all of us marching up to his door and saying, hey, you need to do something here. And he's like, but he's just stubborn, and he had to do it his way. I think he just would rather do this and live a shorter life than to not do it and live a longer life.
Right.
It's just like the choice he made, really.
And then maybe, why don't you just go on when he died? How did that affect you? And then what did you think the dead, the future, if anything?
I was really in shock, and it was somebody. I got a call that day. I remember specifically. It was this the guy. His name was Ryan Strong, and I know we're friends on Facebook. And he's a little bit younger than me. I remember from high school, and in high school he used to ask us questions about because he wanted to get into the jam band thing. And he called me, and of all the people, he's the one that told me. He's like, "Hey, Jerry died," and I was like, "What?" And I thought I didn't believe it at first. And then I started seeing it on the news and everything. It's hard to. I just was so in shock. It's like I couldn't believe it at first.
Yeah, I think. I think when you have that first rock and roller that you look up as an idol, I went through it when John Lennon died, and I didn't actually hear until the morning on the school bus, but it was just so shocking. And then when others died over the years. But when Jerry died, it was kind of like, as soon as I got the call, and then I listened to the radio, I suddenly I did one of those, oh my God, like it just felt so, and I hate to say the word right, but I was like, yep, that
sounds about right.
Not surprised.
I was not at all surprised. That kind of felt like the way that he was going, and it had been announced in the news that he had been at Serenity
Knowles.
Serenity Knowles.
I don't know why I remember that
for like 2 months or
High-end
something like
rehab
that.
clinic.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he had been there like the extended stay program, and it obviously wasn't working. So,
yeah.
Well, on that, we're gonna. Which has been great. We've just been talking so much about so many good things, but we're going to jump ahead of course, maybe just have you guys pick each another little song, a little sample, maybe tell you why you like it. Chad, why don't you give me a little piece and we'll play something off your list here.
All right. Why don't you cue up number 59, and this is actually for Tim because I know this is one of his favorite songs. It's a song that was originally on American Beauty album, which is his favorite, called Broke Down Palace, but this is a live version which is from 1980, and is actually the version that's on Dead Set, which is a live album from 80. They actually sing great.
I love the background crowd. You can hear people yell like, "Hey!"
Fare you well. Sing are flown except you alone.
Yeah, those harmonies are just great.
Yeah. They weren't always that way. They kind of were good and bad nights on the vocals, but their good nights were just better than anything, you know.
John, what do you got for play a sample?
Play a sample. Can I get me some Shakedown Street?
What number is
89, please.
What record was that off of?
This is just not on an album. This is from a bootleg.
But I mean, the Shakedown Street was on that.
Oh, the album was called Shakedown Street.
That's what I thought.
So this is actually with Bruce Hornsby. You can tell right away. You can hear the piano.
Yep, there we are. We hear that. Yeah, Phil's notes. I mean, this is like a...
So Yeah, that was from September 22nd, 91 at Boston Garden. It's not actually on an album. I don't think it's been released on an album, but you can go to archive.org and stream virtually any Grateful Dead show for free. No bullshit. You can just go there, whether it's your phone or on your computer, and you can click a show, click the song, it will play.
Awesome. Let's come all the way. We're getting to our last section here, which is why we did it this week. The Dead just, of course, the big show's announced for the Chicago ones this weekend. The Adams, and he's playing with Trey from Fish. Maybe both you give me your thoughts on that. Now, you already did hear, because they did do the, couple shows?
Santa Clara? Right?
Yep.
Last
Saturday and Sunday.
And but the big ones this weekend at Soldiers Field, where their last show was in 95. What's your thoughts on Trey playing with them? And then maybe from there go into a little bit of, Chad and I talked about the corporate thing happening where just, the ticket prices being skyrocketed, and of course the scalping, and we were talking about how maybe a lot of the real Deadheads, although John is going, but a lot of them can't afford and aren't going. That, we were saying, like, wondering, would Jerry have wanted that? I don't know. John, why don't you start on that?
Yeah, he's actually going to the shows.
Yep.
I'm not. I'm going to be watching him at home on the couch.
But John's a baller. He's got a checkbook, so he probably should.
Actually, it's not the checkbook. I just got lucky on the internet lottery.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I did the mail order and got rejected. Got it mailed back, and then I did the day that they went on sale with Ticket Bastard. I got 7 of my friends in 6 different markets around the country, and had them ready to, hit yes if I got any tickets. If we got any tickets, not that everybody was going to go. I have some really nice friends out there. And none of us actually, no one scored except the last window that I happened to have open that I hadn't looked at for like 15 minutes. And it's when I went and was closing out the windows after I was all frustrated, it said, you have precisely 91 seconds. And
oh, wow.
I went, yes, and hit the button and bought tickets. And now
and
we're
how much
going.
Did you pay for those
Well,
ones?
ironically, I only paid the $56.
Holy shit.
Per ticket.
Oh, my God.
But the ticket is $56 plus $29 in fees.
Okay. But
so,
arguably,
still,
what would those exact tickets, let's just say right now, what would they go for?
Right now, well, let's see. I looked last week. I haven't looked this week, but last week, the same tickets individually were going for about $275.
Okay.
Yeah, they dropped a little. I was actually pulling it up right as you were talking. I'm seeing like $225 to $240.
Yeah.
And is every show sold out, or they're not? There's some. left out?
Every show is sold out in Chicago. Not every show is sold out at Levi Stadium. Levi Stadium, though, looks to be huge. So
Okay.
I think that played into it in California. Also, it was just the way that it all went down, in the sense that they did the mail order. And if the reports are true, Soldier Field has, give or take, 275,000 seats, or they can sell 275,000
For the 3 days.
For the 3 days, for granted you're on the lawn, but those are people at the show. They got 880,000 requests. So in other words, every show was sold out. What is that, like 5 times?
Right.
So I think when they decided to then go ahead and add after the ticket debacle and add the Levi shows, I think that caused a lot of sort of, in a sense, animosity, that people were like, okay, what's next? Well, it turns out pay-per-view was next. Now these exclusive shows are now all available on pay-per-view. Oh, what's next? Okay, now they're all available actually on YouTube. It's like, it's incredible.
You can also pre-order the DVD and CD set right now too. It's like $175 or something.
And how many people? Do you think a lot around the country or world, obviously, but I see people just like having parties. Like Chad is like these watching parties.
Yeah, if I was not going, I would definitely be either attending or hosting a watching party. Yeah.
And why don't you then go into quick what are your thoughts going into the shows with the Trey thing?
Well, I'm personally super excited about it. By the way, I don't know if he was asking me, but
I was asking you.
yeah, I'm really super excited about Trey, and here's why. I think based on I have friends that are Deadhead friends that are in their 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s. None of us have any sort of ownership on the Grateful Dead. They're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to do it. And we don't say whatever we can say whatever we want. They don't care. Clearly, with the Bill Graham being their promoter over the years, they did what they did with Peter Shapiro, their current promoter. They're doing what they're going to do, and screw all of us. If we want to attend the shows, we got to abide by whatever the plan is and buy the tickets, and we can either be excited or not.
You have the choice. Some people that are really negative, they think they complain. It's like, well, you don't have to go to the shows.
Yeah.
You could go watch it in the theater. You could go watch it at your house. You could watch it afterwards.
Yeah.
What do you think?
And about the choice on the guitarist, I think that, John from Further, I think there's a lot of other people, Warren Haynes.
Stu Allen.
Yeah, Stu Allen.
What do you think about the John Mayer thing coming up, too?
God. Oh, jeez. We can talk about that later. But I think the whole thing, he could have been a good guitarist, whatever. But in terms of them deciding, that they made the choice. And personally, I'm super excited because I think Trey Anastasio is absolutely fantastic as a guitarist. I want to listen to him, and I can't wait to hear how he interprets the Grateful Dead. And there's probably going to be some things that I absolutely flippin' can't stand, and there's going to be some stuff that I love.
Well, it's all. Just me. I'm an entrepreneur, musician. It's a very smart marketing thing because, of course, as we talked about, the Fish has a similar scene. So it makes just perfect sense
It's
that
an
way.
obvious choice,
Now,
really.
I do see how probably the Real Dead fans, I wonder how he's going to interpret. Does he try to play like Jerry a little bit? Does he just do his thing with the songs? I feel like he can't do his own thing. Chad, you don't have to raise your hand. It's not school. You don't have to raise your hand.
I have to go to the bathroom.
I need to go.
Too much.
My
too
wife
much
is at
Coors Light.
I
home
know, I
cooking
get
me
to-
mac and cheese. Is that Trey? I guess is. I know I would expect if I'm going, or I would like, him to sound a little bit like Jerry. That would just be my instinct, because again, it's been for so long that. What are your thoughts, Chad, on all those questions? We talked about Trey, the new tour, everything. Tickets.
Well, first of all, I knew that it was going to be hard to find these, the Santa Clara shows from last weekend because I know they're going to be selling these. So, but strangely enough, the second set of the second night showed up on YouTube, and I think it's still up there. So I listened to that at work the other day while I was working. And Trey sounds like Trey, but I don't think he's trying to play like Jerry. I think the important guitar riffs he's obviously trying to copy. But what I noticed is his tone actually sounded quite a lot like Jerry. I don't know, John, if you heard any of the any of that
I
set.
heard some of the songs, and
yeah,
they sounded good to me.
Yeah, they sounded great. And another controversial statement here. There were certain times where I felt like Trey was maybe the guy that was kind of holding it together at certain points,
And how was everybody playing, do you think? I haven't heard a sample. You didn't. Do we have that even? Play a sample? But how you said you heard a set. How's the rest of the band playing?
Pretty good. I think it all sounded really good. I've heard comments. People say the drummers aren't playing that well. A lot of people were saying Phil shouldn't be singing because they've been divvying up the Jerry songs. Phil's been singing a lot of them. Trey gets to sing a couple. Bruce is singing a couple. But they did Eyes of the World on Sunday night. I remember a lot of people were just like, don't let Phil sing those anymore, because he doesn't, he doesn't have the best voice. He doesn't sing like Jerry.
But how much back to a word we've used a lot today is experience. Again, it has been so long since people have come together to almost really celebrate the Grateful Dead. So the fact we know they're older, right? So I feel like they're going to be more relaxed. They're just excited about it.
Well, I've heard, I've seen Further twice, and I've seen Phil Esch and Friends twice. And I decided after seeing them 4 times that I'm done because I actually, other than Box of Rain, I can't stand his voice.
A lot of people say that, yeah.
And here's somebody who's seen, 25-something Grateful Dead shows. But that being said, I'm going to enjoy 98% of the rest of the songs. So I'm open to whatever they choose. And, I'm going to have my predictions. And there are certain songs that I think that they're going to play. And I'm just excited that it gets to unfold in front of me.
Yeah, right. And I don't care who's singing what. I don't care if Phil sings. I mean, maybe it doesn't sound that great. Who cares? This isn't about, it's not going to sound like the Dead because Jerry's not there. I mean, that's the point. I mean, no matter what you do, even if Trey plays exactly like Jerry, it's still not going to sound just like the Grateful Dead, at least to me. So, I mean, it's more about, to me, a lot of people that I've talked to that are going, I mean, they feel it's their duty as like a big Deadhead, or maybe people, like I said, I haven't seen as many shows like John or other friends of mine, but they feel like they need to go back and pay their final respects. Or a lot of people are going to connect with old Deadhead friends that they maybe haven't seen that all live in different parts of the country and they only see each other on Dead Tour. I mean, there's a lot of that too. Like, I want to go. It's like a nostalgia thing, I think there's very few people out there that are expecting it to be like the Grateful Dead. It's more like it's just a celebration to me. That. That's what I think. I personally wasn't that interested in going because I would have more fun sitting at home and watching it in high def.
Right, because people have the technology. It's probably, it's probably gonna be pretty sweet, right?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. And I saw the YouTube was the pro shot from the Sunday night that was up that was up there right now, and I think still is. And it looked great. I mean, the shots were good, the sound was good, everything. It's like I'm just not. It's more fun to me to watch it at home and be a listener than to be surrounded by it. Like, people love that, being surrounded by people. They want to go to Soldier Field. They want to be with thousands and thousands of people. I'm not really wired that way, and I never really have been. So it's all just a matter of opinion. You can enjoy it however way you want, really.
Do you think, you said it's going to come out as DVD and live show? I mean, then because it is so different, do you think it's going to really sell that well? Or will people like it? You think
of like the Cream, when Cream did the reunion, whatever was that, 10 years ago now? Yeah. It's been a while. I mean, people ate that stuff up in the Police reunion and stuff like that. I know they're different, but they're all these older bands, that are getting back together. I think it's going to be huge. I mean, I know people that aren't even really big Deadheads, and if they're listening, I'm sorry, but I don't mean it like in a bad way, but there's at least 3 or 4 friends that have emailed me in the last month and said, hey, I'm going to the Dead shows. What are some albums I should get to try to get familiar with them so that I'm ready for the shows, because they don't really know much about them. Okay. And it's like, well, you can't. It's hard to crash course the Dead because there's so much out there,
Wait a minute. There are people out there who don't know what albums to buy, and they got tickets.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly it. I mean,
that's the argument, right?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I wasn't going to say it, but I mean, it doesn't bother me. But there's some people that are just like, I know some hardcore Deadheads that just could not figure out how to get tickets.
Do you think Jerry would have done it different, or tried to make it different, like either more affordable or something? I don't know.
I think it's the same thing as I said before. I think that they're going to do it the way they're going to do it, and I don't think it's really going to be too much different. If you ever hear about when Jerry would talk about his being married and his wives, and he did what he was going to do, and his drug use, he did what he was going to do, and I don't think there would be too much difference as far as, he'd want to have the prices down or whatever, and we have no idea. I mean, he could be a touring Banshee, or he could be, taking a 15-year break.
No, exactly. You just don't know. I don't think Jerry would have necessarily put a halt to anything. Sometimes I think that almost the way this is being advertised and promoted, it almost feels like it's not even in their hands at this point.
Especially
like
the
it's
whole
bigger.
Bigger,
it's almost bigger than them. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think that's how I think the whole thing with the Peter Shapiro was quite the story. But I think the whole idea of how the California shows ended up happening. There were a lot of people that were predicting, and then there's also a lot of speculation that there's going to be more. I doubt there's going to be more, but I don't really care. I'm excited about these 3.
Right. last thing, we just mentioned another person might be involved. I saw the videos now. You had some feedback on the John Mayer thing. Of course, again, we're talking about a member, of course, different kind of music. I want to quick give my opinion. Now, keep in mind, this is me because I'm a pop musician and I'm a John Mayer fan, but I did watch the Sugar-Ree video they did at the Lesch's place.
Terrapin Crossroads?
Just the little part of the bar. Now, I thought it was kind of cool, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I've seen that, only a little bit of that, but I saw John Mayer and Bob Weir on Late Night, and I thought that was outstanding. But I've been a big John Mayer fan from his guitar standpoint, not necessarily his voice, but I saw him at Live Aid a long time ago. I also saw him a couple other concerts where he's played at a Guitar Summit where there's less of him singing, more of his guitar playing, and as far as the feature is concerned, and I mean, he's great to listen to. I keep joking with my friends, my Deadhead friends, that come fall, we're going to hear the Grateful Dead, or hear John Mayer backed by the Grateful Dead singing "Your Body Is a Wonderland."
Well, let's just play a clip of that because this is the one, and I got confused that. Chad, you sent me the bigger stage that they did at Terrapin.
Okay, so this is even.
This is this little front room thing, and I just thought it was really groovy. Just Mayer's kind of groove on this.
It takes a while to get going.
Yeah.
That's like most of their songs.
I know, right? When does the vocal start? I guess I like, too, maybe that John sings it just like John Mayer.
When they come and take you down.
Seems pretty cool to me, but that's just my thoughts. It was just one of your thoughts.
Well, see, I like John. I'm a fan of John Mayer. I mean, I'm a Deadhead. I love Fish, but I like pop music too, and I think it's great. I was a little skeptical if I was going to like it, but once I saw him sit in on the bigger set on the bigger stage, there's a video out there from Terrapin Crossroads if you want to see it. It was great. I mean, people were, when it was announced that he was going to play, or the rumors started spreading that he was going to maybe be playing with them on a tour. Everyone, Deadheads were just like, oh God, this, they'd say, oh, he's a douchebag or whatever. But when he did this show, I think that changed a lot of people's minds because he was pretty respectful for the music. He stayed out of the way when he needed to stay out of the way, and he stepped up when they told him to step up. And I don't feel like he tried to dominate the sound or anything. I think he was very respectful to the music, and I think that the Dead fans that were there really took notice of that, and kind of he gained a lot of respect from them for doing it that way.
Yeah.
I think it was great. I enjoyed it. I've listened to the whole show, and it was great.
Last little comment here from both you guys is, one is just really a question. How long do you see Grateful Dead releasing shows? Because I just feel like that's something that can be never ending. John, what's your thought quickly? How long? I mean, obviously there's infinite shows almost at this point. Like you said earlier, there's just so much information. It's
How many shows did they play? Wasn't it like
6,000,
2,600
or 2,600. Sorry.
Yeah, and I heard there's something like, I could be way off on this, but I think it was like 80% of those shows are in the vault.
Yeah, I was thinking
80%.
2,600.
Yeah,
something like that, and 80% are recorded.
Yeah.
Huh. So I mean, obviously we're talking 10, 20 years, maybe. I mean, releasing, stuff.
Well, I think a good indication of it is that they have, if you think of Grateful Dead ticket office and the way that the tickets went down, they're actually still a house in a small town in in Northern California. It's been there for 25 years, and it's still the way tickets were done. Now things have gotten so much bigger and broader and the whole thing. And now, parents are, now it's grandparents that are probably running things. And I think they could probably be releasing, their children could be taking over soon. We could be seeing albums forever.
They're kind of in a steady groove lately. It seems to be 4 archival releases a year. Is archival meaning just like releasing one show. It's like the Dave's Picks. I actually do the subscription. My mom gets it for me for Christmas every year. Huh. You pay up front for the whole year, and you get 4 Dave's Picks, guaranteed to come out, and you get a bonus disc. So there's 4 shows a year guaranteed, and then they do like a bigger box set. This year it's the really big one, which is the 80 CD set of a complete show from every year from 65 through 95. Or 66 through 95. There's no full show for 65. Or 66 through 95. But sometimes it's a little bit smaller. Like a couple years back, they put out the May 77 box. It was like 5 shows, I think. 6 shows in succession, like May 11th, 12th, 13th, 15th, 17th. All those, and the dates in between, there was no show. So, it's been 4 shows plus a big box at minimum. And they've been doing this for 5-6 years, and I think it'll continue for a long, long time. And they're doing the bigger box sets, like the 80 disc and the complete Europe tour, and they did the Spring '90 tour. Like, they're starting to see, wow, these sell too. So, I could see it going on for at least another 20 years, easily.
The question you said that somebody shouldn't ask, but I'll still ask it, just because, again, for the listeners that, like I said, some people are going to hear this that are big Dead fans. Some are like, wow, I heard some information and stuff that I want to check out. Of course, I know the real Dead fan is like, you can't really comprise it into what should I get first, but let's do the best we can for somebody out there. John, let's say someone's listening and they're just going to pick up a record. They don't have any. They like what we talked about and heard. Where do they start?
Dead Set.
Dead Set. Okay.
Really interesting.
Because it combines,
and so it's called Dead Set.
Yep.
And how many is that on? How many? Not discs. Well,
I think it's a 1 disc.
It's a 1 disc. It was originally a double album.
Yeah.
But it's on iTunes. I did see it.
So the reason that I picked that one is because it has such a wide retrospective of the different songs over the years. Leading up until that point in time, obviously. And God, it just rocks.
That is true.
In some places, it's the go-to.
How come I didn't get that one, Chad?
Well, to me, there aren't really any jams on it, but the song choices, the song list on that album is really, really good, and the songs are played really, really well. But you don't really get a taste of the jams. There's, I think, like literally not one jam on that album. But that's okay if you're a new fan. It's just kind of dip your toe in the water, get familiar with their repertoire,
right? Yeah.
So
I get that.
Why don't you give a different one then? If you're going to say a different one, what would you say?
Well, if you want to do the studio route, I would say American Beauty for sure. My personal favorite, although I don't know if it's the first album to go to, but I love Mars Hotel. I've always loved that. It's got Scarlet Begonias. Unbroken Chain's a great song. U.S. Blues, and then Terrapin Station's a good one. But if you want to go the live route, and if you want to break it up in the very, very general eras, I would say get Live Dead, which is the height of their psychedelic 60s. That's their very first live album. It's called Live Dead. And I would say Without a Net on the far end. That was from the 89-90 tour. Those are both good intros to the live.
Because that one has the Branford Marsalis.
Yeah, it has the Eyes of the World with Branford on it. It's got a really good Bird song. All the songs on it are really good.
That's a fantastic album from beginning to end.
Yeah. Europe 72 is, not many people argue that's a great live album. It's similar to Dead Set where there's not a lot of jams, but at the very end there's a like a Truckin' in the Morning Dew, and there's a big bunch of stuff in between those two songs. Yeah. So Europe 72. But 69, 72, 77, and then 89, 90. Like
I
very
ask
general.
For one, Chad, by
okay,
the
but
way.
You can't though.
But we're going to keep going back to American Beauty.
Yeah, that's always a good place to start, no matter what.
Working Man's Dead, I think.
Right.
Yep. And if you like American Beauty, get and you want more, Working Man's Dead, definitely. They're like brother and sister albums. They came out within 4 or 5 months.
Even though Working Man's Dead came out before, but start with American Beauty and then go backwards.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming, John. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming to reach out on Twitter.
Yeah.
Cool to meet you. And even though Chad, I thought you guys kind of knew each other, but it just seemed to be a perfect match because you guys
I
both.
thought so too.
I've seen the Kung Fu Hippies at least twice.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
He knows Munchie.
Yep. You just seemed like a good match, and it was just great because you guys obviously are knowledgeable. I think this is something where, if we get good feedback, maybe we'll do it again sometime and get a bigger forum. But I think that's what I love people doing is bouncing off each other about the Dead, because that's one thing I've noticed out there is there are just a lot of opinions, and like anything, I don't like people when they just say something. I want to have some education behind it. Tell me why. If you like this show and you say it's better, well then let's go into that.
And maybe we should do part 2 next Tuesday.
Talk about the shows.
So you can
Well,
have the video version and the live version.
Yeah.
And then
We'll sell it for sell it like $80 a piece.
Right.
As long as Peter Shapiro gives us the rights.
The rights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I'm sure he will.
I'm gonna do a little sample now. I know you guys, Chad's a singer, but maybe we're gonna. I know you guys are gonna laugh, but we're gonna sing along a little bit as much as you can. We're gonna sing a little bit of Ripple together. What do you think?
I like it.
You like it?
I like it.
Just a little.
Tim, is this
homage.
your favorite Grateful Dead song?
Yes,
Would
it
you have to
is.
say
Yes,
if you had to
it
pick
is.
one?
I know it is.
This is on American Beauty, by the way.
Maybe it's just a little homage to Jerry and the celebration of it, which I think that's what this podcast was about, and this might be the longest podcast I've ever done. But, we've talked about some interesting stuff, I think, to people that, and it could have probably went for 2 more hours about more information. Again, this is the Being Mahoney podcast, and normally I do my own show, but this is kind of a special edition, the Grateful Dead show, which we may do again. You can check out my Twitter at Tim Mahoney Music with questions, comments, or email timmahoneymusic@gmail.com. And let's just hit a little bit of Ripple here. Let's see if you guys probably already know all the words. What am I thinking? Right?
I don't know the words.
Here we go. Let's sing. I'll start the singing. It's kind of low. If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Help me out. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble tossed, no wind to blow. Reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, if your cup is full, may it be again. Let it be known there is a fountain that was not made by the hands of man. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow.
is for your steps alone. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble tossed, no wind to blow. You who choose to lead must follow. But if you fail, you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? And if I knew the way, I would take you home. Da, 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 Thank you so much for listening. There's a little pay tribute to Jerry and the Grateful Dead celebration. Tune in again. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you again.